Hello, Dennis.
Hello. How are you doing, Adrian?
I'm fine. I'm suffering that all social media is lying to me because of AI and tech.
Didn't AI take your job yet? Like, what's going on? Isn't it like
It did my
like AI is supposed to have
take
taken
away-
your job away by lunch, at least?
it did take away my programming job, though.
But you
Yeah,
got it
I'm
back
happy
because
with
they're
all
turning
the
off Fable again. So you'll have a job again next week because Fable is getting closed.
I can't afford Fable, to be honest. Not possible right now.
That's why you have a job. There we go.
Opus is a contender, but not a substitute for now. Fable is, but yeah, it is it's actually a funny topic and a sad topic at the same time, what we're going to discuss today. And I think we have many topics, actually. It is more like a mix-up of topics because you might think about different things than I do. But I have the feeling that, when we started to stream, we had this idea of there are the TDers and the nons, the editors and then waterfall guys, the scrums and the others. And, you were one of those, or maybe something in between. But today, I have the feeling that we have so many new gurus out there who basically make sure, who try to generate a new idea of how things work because they have now a powerful AI client or agent. And that is what I see out there very often. It's that you become very insecure when we see like people talking about AI as a substitute. We had that as a substitute. We're talking about that you can now build apps just with one person. The next thing is you actually don't need to hire anyone anymore. You can do everything alone. And when you're a tech lead or when you're an employee, you are full of fears of all kind. So we never had that much fear and that many differences, so different types of fears and anxieties built up as we have right now. That is what I see out there. People are very insecure about how to implement things. People are very insecure how to get the next job. When you talk today to a junior developer or a developer in general who is looking for a new job, they are literally afraid that they might not find something, and even something that it is not lasting anymore. So the trust in the industry that it will keep me, it will feed me, and I just need to be loyal is nearly gone. That is a big of an issue right now. And the tech leads themselves as well, they drifting in between the idea of how do I implement AI, how do I manage people. Some people already use AI, some don't want to, some are really that, but we don't have the budget for this, but somehow the expectations are there now and changing. So people feel very uncomfortable in basically all teams I'm working with, with all individuals I mentor right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I had time to speak to a mentee longer today because his Claude agent limitation was arrived and we needed to wait hours. So it was a good time, though.
I mean, from a perspective of juniors, it's very difficult to be a junior right now. To enter the industry into this, that's prevalent in our ecosystem right now. The AI psychosis, but also the AI tooling that is helpful, and also the FOMO and the AI will eat your jobs and your future and your kids and your second mortgage.
It can eat my mortgages.
AI, it can eat my mortgage too. AI tools are definitely useful. You can definitely build apps in one day. But so can everybody else. So it's not that we don't need engineering anymore for that, but those problems are no longer worth solving with an engineer.
Yeah.
Right. So now you need engineers, and always needed and still need engineers for everything else. So it did replace. So AI is having a huge shift in workflow. Right. So it's not a huge shift in the job market. Not as much as people would lead you to believe. But there is a huge shift in workflows. Some people's workflows are also from a different direction. A lot of engineers that I work with, they don't code anymore. As in, they don't write per se every line character by character. That was a rapid shift. I think in less than a year, we went from 0% to 100% very quickly. But that's more akin to, how much text do I write without a grammar checker and autocorrect? Like at some point it was 0 and then it was 100% when some tool rolled it out. So that's what it feels like. That doesn't mean that, most of our code is generated by AI. Well, that doesn't mean that there isn't an engineer in the loop. Most of the code that was generated last year was by engineers, and most of the code that is generated this year, today, is also generated by engineers, but there is an AI in the loop. So I would attribute that more to a tooling change rather than there being some hyper intelligent automation that literally replaced you at work. I don't think that's a realistic depiction, and that's what social media would want to scare you with, because let's say the science fiction fantasy that people want to sell with AGI is that AIs are building hyper-productive systems very fast, and they don't need an operator, right? So that you don't need an engineer. It's just a bunch of business people talking business and markets and customers and setting prices, and then the AI is listening in and making decisions. That's not happening. So you still need a lot of engineering in the loop. A lot of engineers, a lot of harnesses, a lot of product thinking, architecture, all that jazz. Cost savings for infra, cloud ops, operations, debugging. None of that went away. We did get a lot of interesting tooling in that regard, but definitely not to the degree that you would cut jobs, especially now with the price hike. So regardless of what you have or have not replaced with AI tooling-wise and automated, the cost of that automation also went up because the models are becoming more and more expensive. There's even projections to show that for the primary vendors to be profitable, we can probably expect a 5 to 10x price hike on token spend over the next few years. Right, and then that would then already be a significant factor of an engineering salary. Even more than engineering salary per engineer, possibly if if we don't see improvements in efficiency in token usage, or improvements in or reductions in salary, or improvements in productivity coming from the tokens.
Well, I see it that especially younger roles, less experienced roles, which were there to learn and support others, they have a problem, in my opinion, because there is a hesitancy by leadership and companies to employ these people, because no matter what you do, they are more expensive than any AI token usage idea that you could have. And they put more work, more load, more fast-paced work on the existing engineers, and that it works short term. It works, but it is a huge burden. So, which means that the existing seniors who are capable of running agents and following those agents and say, oh, that's actually good tooling, they are not like they are now, let's say, done in 50% of the time with 50% of the outcome. They basically do much more than they have done before in basically the same amount of time, a little bit more even, because they have, let's say, 3 open new threads, and they try to close the threads, so they have the tendency to even work longer hours because they need to get done all these kind of aspects. That is what I see out there very often. Here in Germany, I see it basically everywhere. I think it is because I work a lot with agency types of works, and they are mainly focused on creating things. It's not that they try to solve big business problems all day long. It is more that they actually produce things. That is what I see out there as well. And especially there, I see a tendency that that there's not much hiring going on. We have, for some problem-solving freelancers, which are hired, senior freelancers, companies are happy to pay for them, but they expect them to do the AI work. That's interesting as well. So they don't see it with their own seniors because they're a little bit hesitant and they don't want to do this. But the freelancers are willing to do this, and they are used to pay a lot of them to them anyway. And so they make the actual AI transformation, not the internal people. That is what I see as well. So I see a shift towards a tendency that we actually lose headcounts. That is what I see. I see that in Germany, definitely. Not much. It's not like 50% of the people are gone, but I see a problem with future talent, with the offspring of the industry. I see a huge problem for younger developers getting into real jobs again when the company doesn't have a typical flow of handling that anyway. Because, for example, in Germany, you have a lot of company with obligations to train people, like apprenticeships, vocal training. You need to do that. But most of the companies, which are still small companies, don't have this obligation. So they have right now, in a time when they need to save money anyway. Even let's say Fable is a thing there, but any Mythos thing is but let's say things like Opus, for example, they are cheaper than hiring a new person. And this equation works for the people. The problem is that equation destroys the culture and destroys the future if AI doesn't really evolve very fast of what it is today, which is actually a hyped tool. Still a hype. This is a very good, but still just a tool. And we are doing things with that tool which we shouldn't do to a culture. And either we get to AI, to AGI, which is highly unlikely, or we will have a problem in 1 or 2 years. And this problem will come sooner as we think. That is what I think. We will definitely lack seniority in the future, and that is not FOMO. That is what I see. It's like, it's like it is. I never saw so many unemployed junior developers like today. Even in COVID, it wasn't that bad. And I don't have that's new. I don't have any company to refer a junior to right now. That was always the case. Juniors came to me on LinkedIn to know somebody. let's say 50% of the cases, I had actually someone to send this person to. I don't know if there was a role or not, but there was a person I knew that they're looking for something. This is not the case anymore. I don't know anyone who is looking for a junior role right now, personally. That's the reality. And that is a coincidence with AI and the economy right now.
But I think that is a coincidence. I don't think it caused by AI. It just happens to be the case.
AI was
I
there
don't think.
together with the economy coincidence. That is what.
Yes.
It
I
is
don't
used
think
as an
juniors
obvious
have a harder
solution.
time. Like, as far as I can remember, it was always difficult to refer a junior engineer to a company because they were just not competent. Like, in other fields, maybe you can benefit from somebody who is kind of like an intern or an apprentice. But if the definition of a junior engineer is that it is somebody who is pre-computer science degree and has less than a year of experience in tech, that I expect such a person to be 14 years old, not 27, because it is easy to get experience with it, with the industry, with the ecosystem, right? It's like it was never easier to pick up one of the popular frameworks, one of the tools, even the app development, and start somewhere. Now, you don't have to start in like high tech enterprise application development or fintech, but you can start in building a blog of some kind, building a pipeline of some kind, playing around, goofing around with crypto. It is definitely easy to get into the field. Plus, it's also very like low friction to have the AI teach you a few things, build you a tutorial, and then you can learn from that. What I can see is that there's definitely a larger gap between what you learn from a typical computer school, so below university level, and also what you learn at university. So those like really fundamental traditional hard skills that you get in university are very good for research and building, let's say, government level projects where you fundamentally have to get a lot of details right on the first go, and then you learn the engineering practices in the field. But it was already quite lacking in practical engineering culture. A CS degree didn't teach you how to work in a team, how CI/CD works, all the iterative development practices, all the stakeholder manager soft skills, the product analysis, quite fundamentally useful tools like TDD, event modeling, event sourcing. These things don't really stand out. You might hear about them at university. You might have like a 3-month, 6-month leg where it's like in your periphery, but you don't really know how to separate it for value or impact, or you don't really get a strong signal from it without using it in a real production system. So I think the difference between a CS graduate and what might be considered a productive engineer has grown significantly because of the reliance on AI tools for that productivity. So
it is hard to make the
there's
leap to an experienced person.
There's also this idea that most AI tools are coming from the private sector. And if you run the AI tool yourself, you need expensive hardware. And that immediately puts it out of the hands of academia, right? So universities generally favor cheap, free, or open source tools to force onto students to teach them the tool. And for AI development specifically, none such exist right now. None that would have low latency, be very easy to run, that where the university wouldn't force you to buy a M4 Max MacBook and a Anthropic subscription, right? So because they don't do that, you only get exposed to those kinds of tools once you have a job. And if you don't have a job, the only way for you to build that experience is for you to be able to afford it as a hobby. So there's definitely that factor. That used to be the case before, where people didn't get exposed to industry level tooling outside the industry, right? So if you started coding in the 90s, 2000s, you already had this experience with enterprise level IDEs, right? Before we got things like VS Code and the free tier, school tier, open source tier of the IntelliJ ecosystem, basically all the IDEs were crap, and there was a few good ones, and they were filthy expensive, right? So even most companies couldn't afford them. So even people who were employed were using Notepad++ and Sublime and God knows what, like really cheap IDE, until the ecosystem stabilized and they became affordable. So I think we're going through that kind of swing with AI right now, where in order for you to get experience, you need to basically use it at work, and you need to be working someplace where they can afford it or have skin in the game to benefit from it, so that they actually pay for it. And junior engineers without a job, people in academia, hobby programmers who are 12 years old simply don't have access to those resources to bootstrap the learning experience. This will change. I'm sure there will be a hardware breakthrough with graphics cards or some kind of AI optimized hardware where everybody will be able to afford to run something as powerful as Fable locally with cheap hardware. That'll come in 5 years.
Yeah, this is a long time frame. So we have AI
Yes.
for 1.5 years in that.
So there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap where the people who can afford it are playing with it and getting experience, and those who can't aren't. So they are sort of on, not uninteresting, but just on unattractive, let's say, for the job market. Like if you have somebody who has hands-on AI experience, you would pick them because you know that you won't have to teach them. It's also not a very hard science, like how to code with AIs. It's more of a figure it out as you go, but also here's some tricks. So you can't just sit somebody down and teach them a playbook. They actually have to be naturally curious, which already makes the pool of such people very small.
I see another issue as well, which is very adjacent to what you just said, is the not about hardware but about Claude Code, for example, which is the biggest thing right now. So there are some people who just have a $20 subscription. There are some going up to $200, and there are some like me using the API thing, because as soon as you want to do that for real, you have the API version, and that is where Claude Code wants to push everyone towards to. And there's a bit of an issue because you are pushed when you do that with a team. Imagine you have a team of, let's say, 5 people. It's easy to grasp. 5 people, and everyone shall have API access. So we're talking about, if you work on a, let's say, 300, 400,000 lines code, a lot of README context, you're talking about 1K per developer. Let's say 800 per developer, right? So you have something where you need to pay for, and that is already a lot. So when you do that and you see the advantages, the developers say, yeah, that's great, we are faster, we can do things better research, quicker bug fixing, better testing, better review scenarios. It is actually good what Claude Code can do there. The point is, you need to pay for that. Since you need to pay for that, and that is what I basically have in every company, is as soon as that hits, then the leaders need to go to the superiors and ask for more money, and they say, no, you have your headcounts, there's budget, deal with it. Next year you get more money, right? Yeah. So they have 1 year where they have the choice to either hire someone, put the money into AI budget, and many go for, let's hire maybe next year, let's go for AI budget. That is one of the aspects as well, which I see very often, is that people in favor of having these tools, you need to say, okay, no, because as soon as you have 5 people, it is roughly about 1 headcount per 5 people. in Germany right now when you use AI Claude Code on that professional level. So which means that your even how is it called? Air? I don't know. I think it's Air. It's JetBrains Air, the new IDE, which is only for Claude Code and Codex.
No idea. No idea.
This is the special IDE in between the terminal and the JetBrains IDE itself. It's quite interesting. And you see that this specific tooling is what the engineers more and more want to have and value. So there is a value to that kind of tooling. But people are not like in the typical Copilot era anymore, where you autocomplete. I see no one autocompleting anymore. That is not a thing anymore. It doesn't exist in my world.
I mean, they would autocomplete if they were writing, but they're not writing anymore.
Exactly. Right? So everyone is is prompting, reviewing, reading, asking, and talking to the computer via microphone. It's a little bit like making screenshots, setting up MCP servers. They actually save a lot because screenshots is much less expensive than MCP servers to a browser or browser console. So they try to optimize token usage by doing the stuff as a human, which is expensive as an MCP. So they don't use the MCP. Instead, they do it by hand. I do it as well, by the way. It saves a lot of money. And that's quite interesting. Hello, Kaloyan.
Hey, Kaloyan. What I would emphasize here is it's not enough for us to say, oh, I'm a much faster developer. Like the tools are a huge productivity increase, right? Because we're not a factory. Generally, higher productivity would mean that we sell more stuff, right? So if I code faster, if the PRs get merged faster, let's say 2x speed by using Fable, then our revenue pipeline also needs to go up 2x. And that's really what's important for leaders to keep in mind with the sustainability of the whole problem, which is if you're speeding up and it's costing you money and it's putting engineers up to the expectation that they have to run at that tempo, then it's setting them up for burnout. It's setting them up for cognitive issues. It's setting them up for not knowing the code base anymore because the AI wrote everything. You might actually be shipping some slop.
Issue. That is a big issue already.
Right? So, and that's an issue with the seniors. Like we were focusing on the juniors before, but the seniors are having a similar experience. And the leaders
are now independent of AI. That's a
and it has a little bit of that sort of gambling or sort of that addictive dopamine loop to it, where it doesn't get it right. You pull the slot machine, it doesn't get it right again. It's like that. I'm spending money to have another go at the attempt of coding something. So there is definitely something very dark.
There is another
like the behavioral patterns of this cycle that engineering leaders, so that's you, our listener, that you will have to learn how to deal with. Because maybe you need to take the candy away from the kids, and you'll have to teach people reasonable AI usage and token efficiency. And hey, you can't just use Fable for everything. And hey, you don't get time off if Fable is offline. You write it by hand, right? So there is that element
they will find reasons to go home anyway.
Yes. So there is that element of scrutiny that is necessary in today's age, and we just haven't, I would say most leaders haven't mastered it yet. The best leaders that I know, they're exploring. They're trying to figure this out. How to, instead of promoting some kind of AI psychosis and token maxing, to talk more about, okay, how can we improve our process sustainably? What is important for our process, for our vendors, for our customers with regards to token efficiency? Like what is a token efficient problem for us to solve? What is not a token efficient problem for us to solve? What are something, I had this whole discussion last week with a developer who was like, I'm on a time crunch. I'm in a hurry. I'm rushing. Staff engineer. I have to ship something. My CEO is expecting huge productivity. He's using Fable because it was unlocked, so he's using Fable to get it done. And then I looked at the PR, and it's 6,000 lines of code, and the naming is inconsistent. And
The problem is, as soon as you have
there are
people and budget, you won't have.
there were rules. There were things in his output that I wouldn't let slide with a junior engineer because they were inconsistent, which made it harder to read. Things that a machine would do, like using 2 or 3 different words for the same thing, or abbreviating it once, then not abbreviating it later, or using a very unnatural pattern, like a machine pattern where, let's put everything in one file because obviously the AI will just rewrite it and we don't have to cognitively organize the project in pieces that fits into a human's head, right? And and there are such how would you say, there are some new bad habits, let's say, emerging from it. But if you're being pragmatic and you're using it for speed, who's to say that it's irrecoverable? Like, getting it right the first time, and that's why we are reviewing before it sort of gets iterated upon, was because rewriting it was difficult. Right now, the cost of rewriting is not very difficult. The problem is when you rewrite something, that it's very hard to guarantee that every line will be better. What's very easy is to just have the same rewrite, everything different at the same time. But it might improve some things, but make a lot of other things worse, right? So it's very easy to shuffle the code, but very hard to guarantee that it is consistently improving. And our role as engineers always was that if you're adding something to the code base, I need most of the lines to be improving what's already there. We can't just be shuffling around. We can't just say, if it's bad, the AI will rewrite it. Yes, it can rewrite it, but it can't guarantee that every line has improved due to the rewrite. There's a lot of stuff that gets worse.
That will vanish. I'm 100% sure about this. The old school way of thinking line by line is a limitation to the human mind. It is not to the AI mind. So remember how ChatGPT was generating images back then? Like it was like from very abstract to detailed. It is the very same thing how features are built these days. And I see that more and more. It's like you get with this rough, you get closer, but holistically. I see less and less that you build first this widget, then this component, then this API part, then this one. What I actually see is that you see it like like a big picture, and you have very early on in the development process already something you can see. Right?
Absolutely. What I'm seeing though is that a lot of engineers, so a lot of individuals are using AIs for individual productivity increases. And what I would like to see more of, so another topic for engineering leaders, is to see more team-wide initiatives with AI usage. I see a lot of workflows with AIs, with Claude, being hooked into an engineer's individual workflow through their laptop. And I would like to see a lot more agentic work and agentic supervision happening through Slack, through some shared, like the project management software, where they tune Claude or some other bot in and ask questions and refine live, where there's a collaborative effort. Because that feels basically like pair programming with an autopilot. And that's freaking amazing, right? Where I can have a conversation and an AI is building the event model as I'm talking to the person. That's freaking awesome. But I would want to see more of that, because that's the beauty of these tools. That's if that costs a lot of money, that is worth it. Like for us to have a conversation and some AI is making diagrams as we talk, that's stellar.
To be honest, I disagree here. I would like to say something.
Go for it.
It's like we shouldn't take away the things. Like there is a difference between taking notes and creating a visualization of something, because as soon as an AI does the visualization for us, we don't do it anymore. We see it, we don't grasp it anymore. It is like if we don't process something with our own mind, hands, fingers, whatever, then we don't grasp it anymore. And I think that especially the engineers of the future, of the near future, they are the people who need to think through and plan everything. They need to connect everything. The more you pass away to an AI, the less actually will happen. I love to see coding being done by AI. I actually love it. I don't want to miss it anymore. And I will pay for it, no matter the price. But I don't want that the planning phase, the thought iterations, is done by AI at all. In our processes, AI is only allowed to ask questions, never put statements in.
You say you disagree, but I actually didn't say that it should be involved in planning. When I say drawing an event model, that's not planning, that's design. That's decision making, right? So I think humans shouldn't be planning just as much as the AI shouldn't be planning. This idea that we will plan everything in advance and make a huge spec from it. What is important regarding planning, rather than creating the plan? So I'm separating here, vocabulary-wise, the distinction between writing down the plan or visualizing the plan. What's important about planning is not the plan, but the decisions made, right? So that the humans are basically having conversations about, this decision is impactful, and this is the decision I have made. This decision prevents us from going down that route, right? So these things are important, and they have to be done by humans. The decision-making process, where you have to make choices, where you have to make trade-offs, where you have to decide on a fuzzy spectrum. Like this is the spectrum, and we can be there or here. And for this iteration, we want to be somewhat on this side of the spectrum. And that is fuzzy in a way that is very difficult to express, and it requires exploration and experience. And automating the capture of key decisions from a conversation, I think that is useful. Where, Adrian and Dennis are talking, they have just come to a key decision. To visualize that is very useful to me. But I think what you're referring to is this idea that you and I drawing together is a helpful tool for us to think.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Like there is no practical value in the expressive aspect of the tool, right? So that, rather than me drawing with my mouse, I describe it to the AI. I think that's silly. I think that's just unnecessary verbal, word salad. Even though there are tools like Whisperer, which might lend itself to being able to like vibe code a diagram like that, but I don't think that has huge value. Like I wouldn't pay a lot of money for that. But what I was referring to on a larger scale is to get away from this idea that AI usage has to be specifically individual tool augmentation. I find a lot of AI workflows to be beneficial when it's stuff like, hey, last night I run a nightly analysis of everything that the humans did in the code base from the previous day while they're asleep, and here's some problems that I found. To have such a bot in your system that is maybe contextualized, that is maybe looking for security issues, that is maybe, okay, the security issues, we already have the PandaBot and similar stuff and Snyk. But for domain-specific issues, or for design-specific issues, or for, if you're using the code scene MCP, for example, you can highlight things like, hey, this part of the code base was never touched, and it's not very good, but it's fine as long as it's not being touched. The AI can then highlight, hey, somebody started touching like that unhealthy part of the system. I'm marking a code health alert. It's like, if this becomes a hotspot, we should probably refactor. Here's a refactoring plan, right? Because that is what somebody who is overseeing an engineering department, that's what they would be thinking about. Like, when is it time to modernize? What are those areas where the architecture is slightly fighting us, that is sort of incompatible with some parts of our roadmap? if you can automate the detection of that and create suggestions about what to focus on and how to highlight risk in those areas, or just observability telemetry of, hey, we deployed this yesterday. These were anomalies from the logs from last night. And it's a homegrown tool. It's not Sentry, or it's not some, very generic tool, but it's a very specific business tool where you've just taught an agent how to think about your processes and where in the database, where in the read-only replica of your database, it can find certain key informations to pull attention to potential issues immediately after deployment, right? So that if you are one of those people that are afraid of deploying on Fridays, that you can have an AI tool periodically check what's going on in production even when you're asleep, potentially even paging you. But I wouldn't automate that. I wouldn't go as far as automating it just yet, the paging part.
There was something which we had a discussion before, which is going more into the direction of the actual topic, which is the social media is lying about that AI is, creating all these new aspects. Is the issue is that the reality for leaders out there looks little different. So no matter how much you have worked down, no matter how many problems you have solved, most software teams out there are still measured by very weird productivity KPIs. So they basically never get finished with something, because even though they became faster, they will always have throughput to push through. So I think that is an issue as well, why AI really doesn't lead to a improvement of the business, because what you mentioned before, that you need to sell more. If you are twice as fast, you should be selling twice as much. You don't really do that because you optimize only for the throughput, and no engineers actually really involved in how much you can sell or something like that. And even the departments like the product department, the marketing department, they are so focused on what they do that they don't really see the overarching picture anyway. That is the issues we were talking about anyway. So AI isn't really improving currently in these kind of environments. AI costs more money than it actually brings, but the people have the illusion that things are easier, because let's say there is this typical phase of the senior engineer who don't want to use AI because of resistance to change. Then they see, oh, it actually helps me. So ego flips and say, yeah, great, it helps me. I need to code less and I can focus more. In reality, they actually do different things back then from then, but pay more money for that they were actually doing before, but they are not really more productive than before that. There are exceptions, like if you're a funded company who is supposed to build a SaaS product and you get your million or something like that. In that case, it actually helps you to get quicker to the point that you could do something with it. That's definitely the case. In my opinion, it's absolutely the case, but that is not the majority of
software businesses out there. But there's a difference. If you're in that case where you're pre-seed and need angel investment, your likelihood of failing is very high. So you need to throw money at the wall to make it happen sooner, right? Because you are having an existential problem no matter what. So you have to use novel methods to create the equivalent of outproducing or outworking your competition or an established uninnovative player, so that if you want to disrupt the industry. But from a perspective of AI leadership and psychosis and the sustainability practices, what you have to keep in mind is that most of the FOMO, most of the social media campaign that's happening on Western social media, at least, is run by people who have an interest in selling you tokens. So, and we had a similar, now not with the token selling, but a similar craze or psychosis, or what did we use? We used to say fashion or trend in the industry happened with two things that I remember, with three things actually, with Agile, with TDD, and microservices. right? So that people were like, oh, if you're not being agile, you're doing something wrong. So that there was this sort of moral, anti-professional nuance to the communication, right? So that you are being unprofessional or you're being immoral if you're not agile, or you're being unprofessional or there's something immoral about how you work if you're not doing TDD, or you're being unprofessional or there's something immoral about what you're doing if you're not token maxing, if you're resisting AI, right? So there is definitely this pattern to the communication, and you just got to understand that for agile and TDD, it was coming from organizations that were selling certifications and courses. That's where the FOMO, like there are pyramid schemes. There are that huge wave of dark agile companies that live off of shaming you for not having a PMI certification, and then they solve that by selling you a PMI certification that you have to renew every year, right? That's why that exists, and that's why a lot of people then don't like the subject matter topic without the certification, is because they attribute the negativity of the bad actors with the content. And the same thing happened with extreme programming, notably because it came out of that sort of post neo-agilist sort of movement, similar to Scrum, even though they're not related, right? But people put them in the same bucket. And TDD, again, put it in the same bucket of, hey, yeah, you just want to sell me like TDD coaching, but then it's not really useful. Like, where's the data? Blah, 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 blah. And now the same thing is happening with AI, with the difference that there's no courses, at least not professionally, but it's mostly just selling. I mean,
My problem.
there is a B2C market for like scaring non-engineers into like, you need to learn AI or you will never become, you never get a job as an accountant. Like, you have to learn AI if you're a lawyer. You have to learn AI if you're a doctor. There's that angle, but that's not today's topic. But there's certainly that pull of, oh yeah, you should be spending more tokens if you're a serious professional.
I think it's not more tokens. I think the real answer here is to spend the adequate amount of tokens.
I'm simplifying. Yeah. Yes.
No, I mean that this is an issue with social media. You see more tokens. You see that I'm the person spending that amount of money. I'm good in that, right? And you have a low tier Claude Code thing. You are not a professional person. I think things drive the people into spending more, doing more, without thinking of, should I do that, and how should I do that? And I think the problem is that using Claude Code inside your own environment, in your own domain, with your own team, with this uniqueness of everything you have, you can't find a Udemy course here. It doesn't work. It is, even if you hire someone, a professional, a freelancer, a coach, a mentor, into a team, it takes weeks until you get to the point that you understand how to get the people together and use AI efficiently in your context. It can even be different from front end to back end to infrastructure. Yeah. And I think there is the biggest issue, is that AI isn't the thing you see on YouTube, some YouTubers use out there. AI is not a thing on its own. AI is something which does a very specific thing, and you need to think how you utilize it. It is
it's a family of tools. It's a family of tools, right? So similarly to how, sorry if I'm being too techy for today's topic, but similarly to CI/CD tooling, CI/CD was never really one tool. It was more like an ecosystem of tooling, to have tests and linters and formatters and the reports and Selenium and Docker and the images and the database and infra as a service and a million other tools, full configurability, no shared context, ephemeral deployment. Like, I think we had to solve like 200 unrelated small problems to get to a point where CI/CD tooling basically became ubiquitous and very good. I remember there was a time where the only tool that got the job done was Jenkins or Hudson. and you just have to figure it out because it was a crap tool. It was very difficult to work with, and you just had to, fix some stuff. Maybe even hand compile a Linux distro somewhere to spin it up to have a Java instance large enough to expose it correctly behind a firewall. And it was just that it just had that a lot of and then replicating that across multiple teams. We're sort of in that era of AI. The teams that I'm coaching that see the most benefit in sort of that team-wide agentic workflow, they are building their own tools. There is almost no tool that they're rolling out that was purchased from like some kind of productivity hack external third-party vendor. They're building their own stuff. There is a lot of taking inspiration from other people's workflows, right? So, for example, from Brian Finster, from people like Paul Hammond, there's this whole event modeling movement and sort of the spec-driven development movement where you have a few key personalities finding different ways to express what they want from the AI, specifically with an emphasis on structured language or visualization. But mostly what works well in the organizations that I'm involved with is hand-grown. It is contextualized to their needs. It is contextualized to their product. It emerged as trial and error of, hey, I have this workflow, you have the workflow, let's share it. Actually, let's productize some kind of bot internally. Let's create some kind of, our company AI, and then let's have it interact with us in Slack, and let's have it open up tickets in Linear and create pull requests, and let's figure out how to make it understand our code base and our database and certain key aspects about our logging telemetry when it comes to those issues that we debug the most. And that's super useful. Like just a sufficient level of stubbornness and curiosity and thinking outside the box to build something like that and then evolve it. I think for the most, and building MCPs or something equivalent alongside your infra, like it's mostly that. It's mostly just, okay, there's a black box here. The AI can't find it. I can't expose it to the web, so it has to be internally grown through that other system. So there is a lot of privately surfacing certain key information streams that are already distilled. So, but if you're good in enterprise integration, or if you're good in an event modeler, so you do a lot of data management and data design, or you're a data scientist, or you're into machine learning, then you will find somebody in your organization who's good at that, so that you can adapt the data flow. Because God forbid that you have some kind of super intelligent AI that is critical to your business, and it runs on your laptop and only your laptop, and it's hooked up to your Slack through your account, and it has to have Playwright open with a dev sandbox Chrome in order to interact with some key systems. Please don't do that, right? Like it has to be at a more fundamental organizational level so that it can run sort of on your private network. And like, don't get super crazy on, hey, is this intelligent thing I built on my laptop, right? So it's more, what would Claude bot, or what would some bot that you can interact with into the company Slack or the company project management tool, what would that look like if we gave it more brain power, more skills, more MCPs? Yes, more of that, and less, here's that monster I built and it's running on my laptop and you can talk to it through SSH, like, please don't. Like, there's out of the box and then there's out of the box. Right? So as long as you have some level of organizational direction that you can all follow and you can agree that, yeah, it actually, you know what, that's useful, I would use it if you expose it to me through Slack or Linear. Treat that as an important signal, and really that's all it takes. If you're a leader, just try to identify what are those natural things that multiple people end up building or home growing inside your organization, and then just point them in the right direction so that you incentivize it, and then the silly behavior will just remain silly and localized to somebody's
I would be
workflow, and then they will start
absolutely
doing it.
careful to start building AI things as tooling when you don't really need it. Because
Absolutely.
the amount
Absolutely.
of maintenance for AI tools is much higher than for normal tools. First of all, they
And
are
they
not
cost tokens.
cost tokens, they are not deterministic. So it is the typical thing. I use a lot of AI. I program a lot of AI prompting things, and it is like it is a totally new art to do that. So you sit there, and suddenly I use VoiceKeeper, for example, very, 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 very intensively myself, and sometimes it does things I don't really understand why it does that. So
Yeah.
there are sometimes outputs I cannot reproduce. I need multiple AI agents. They think together what that could be, and you just found out that there is a minor change in the model you're using, and in the next version is already different, and you cannot really test it. You can't run tests against it,
Yeah.
and if you rely on that as a company as tooling, I would be careful, because you don't have the people who are actually have the time and the willingness and the understanding to maintain that. Because until today, you don't build the underlying LLMs, you don't build the models, you don't build the agents. You build a part of your facing part of the agent, but not of the rest. So as soon as that is not the case, I have a bad feeling building AI out there and releasing it. I still have it every time I push something. It's a little bit like, let's test it thoroughly on your phone before you
what
actually
I
get to something.
what I found works very well in established organizations is to make sure that such usages have to be public, right? So that there isn't anybody who is like privately talking to the homegrown bot, but instead you talking to the bot must happen on a public Slack channel, or it must happen publicly in the linear board. That no one-on-one private conversations with the robot, so that then a lot more humans can look at it and say, no, that was crazy, like that, it's hallucinating. And people can then react with emojis of question mark, no, that looks hallucinated, and then, hey, ultrathink, fix it, dude, no, this is wrong, double check using this data. What we found to work very well is to just force any kind of AI usage for internal workflows that are organization-wide to be public. So they must be out in the open, so that it isn't somebody's, a company's Slack, but it's completely private one-on-one. You can use Claude for that, right? But then it's annoying, because then you would have to monitor all of your conversations to figure out if it hallucinated to you, and then it requires an oversight board. And I think Meta is doing that to some degree, and there's that whole Meta, Facebook, AI psychosis thing going on, where their engineering culture is doing some stupid changes right now, and nobody likes it, and there's like this huge exit going on, and people leaving Meta because engineers are
Meta always had those
burning out.
very edgy things of,
and it's very edgy, yes, and it feels very edgy, very token maxi, very weird, and engineers hate it, and they're ready to quit and jump
let's
ship.
break things and be fast, like
Yes,
letting
that kind of
20
edgy.
people of your-
That kind of
20%
edgy.
your
And
people go.
and if you're picking this up from social media and think that's a good idea, just calm down, relax. Like, it has to be sustainable. But as a general note, if you're building internal AI tools, dog food it, so you have to use it, and somebody who is not the author of the bot has to use it, so that you actually get confirmation of its value, of its use. And the conversation should be public, so that multiple people can see a conversation, they can respond to it, so you get this sort of passive plausibility check that is happening. And if you can't do that because you're coding on your machine, one hack that you can use is use a different bot to cross-check. So, for example, in one of my Austrian teams, they like to work with Claude, and they cross-check with Codex, so that when Claude comes up with some kind of tickets and breaks down the work, and there's a lot of decisions made by the engineer, then we have a cross-check with Codex. It's like, okay, is this reasonable? Is there something missing here? A lot of people do it with different models from the same vendor. Brian Finster notably likes researching this, where he's basically trying to stay on Sonnet, and then he's trying to figure out, okay, what is actually worth for efficiency to swap to another model? When is it not worth swapping to another model? So Brian Finster on his GitHub, he has a lot of research on like, okay, does TDD make it faster? Does TDD make it slower? Does TDD on this model make more sense? Does it make more sense in that sense? What if you're not making decisions? What if you are making decisions? What if the spec is correct? What if the spec is wrong? And then he does a lot of sort of academic level research on, I mean, still small sample size, but on this kind of workflow analysis on the same model, right? So it's like all inside the Anthropic family of models. And then there's a lot of other people who are throwing general problems at all the models, and then they're basically trying to score the different models by intelligence, and then they're, basically grading it by, amount of intelligence you get per dollar spent of token, or to come up with scorings like that. And there's multiple systems of scoring. I think you don't need to go to that level of degree. Generally, there's this consensus that Fable and Codex are the best review and decision LLMs when it comes to engineering, software engineering. This will definitely change. If you're watching this 6 months from now, I'm sure I'm wrong.
In 6 months from now, you don't have Sonnet anymore.
But from a perspective of organizational constructivity, like behavior that is constructive, I would say introduce bots into your workflows, into your streams, into your Linear, into your Slack that promote conversation, where notably it would have been a product person or a customer support person being like, okay, do I go annoy an engineer with this? To instead them redirecting their hesitation towards a public conversation with, hey, Mr. Bot, I'm debugging this. What do you think the problem is? And then go. It splits out some key detail using skills that the engineers have already put in. And then the CS rep basically says, hey, engineer, do you think this is correct? Could we fix this? And then the engineer comes in and talks to the other bot saying, hey, Claude, super think and see if there's a simple solution for this. And it opens up a PR, right? So that's useful. It gets people to collaborate more in a way that is organic, and it creates a conversation between two humans where otherwise it would have been angst about, okay, I'll create a ticket for you. I know you don't have time. You won't look at it. And then maybe we'll talk about it a week from now if it's still a problem. So try to figure out how these AI tools, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, try to figure out how to incentivize tool usage that brings people together. Definitely no 400 lines of markdown files that Claude spit out and then you turned it into a ticket. No, that's silly. You need to go, June.
I need to go, but you can continue
we're
because you
finished.
are in a flow.
I'm in a flow, but we can continue the flow next week on Wednesdays. If you find this interesting, please, if you could subscribe on YouTube or follow us on Substack or LinkedIn. Very much appreciated. We will see you again at 4 p.m. Central European Time on Wednesday.
See you